Hi everyone, just going to do you a rundown of the technique that I use an awful lot and teach everywhere. Machine reverse applique. Okay, so the quilt behind me and the runner just there are done in this technique. Lots of my stuff is done in this technique because it is so much fun. It's actually quite quick, and you never know quite what you're going to get. It's just fabulous, wonderful fun. So originally, years ago, I wrote a book, this one here, Pile Plunder. That was in 2011. Okay, this quilt was made in 2010. So sort of doing that led me to doing this. I don't know if you can see the picture of that one on the back. That's full of all sorts of everything and patterns and how to and the rest. What I'm going to try and do, because that's out of print now, I do have pamphlet copies only, is give you a rundown of what and why and how. All right. Hopefully I won't miss anything, but I'm going to do you quite an in-depth today. Excuse me, I've got an itch going on here. Right, okay, so first of all, you get yourself a pattern. All right, I'm going to demonstrate with those ones up there. So that's what you get in, you get a pattern book with all the photos and how to and whatnot. But you also then get all of these design sheets. Okay, so they're all full size, ready to play with. Okay, and actually there's a layout for the quilt. So what I do, right, what are we going to need? Requirements would be a good thing, wouldn't it? So you need a fabric that is going to become the outline of your design, a bit like Celtic applique, stained glass window, that sort of thing, that you get a black outline left. All right, so whatever you use on the top of what is going to be a pile of fabrics becomes your outline. It can become your background as well, but you don't have to use it as your background. You can cut that away further on. So I like black, which isn't necessarily everybody's thing, and it can be quite difficult to see and work with. So you might want to consider a different colour, but I would use a plain. Okay, you need to be able to transfer your design onto your fabric. If you've got a very densely patterned fabric or a thick fabric, you're not going to be able to transfer your design very easily, and we like easily if we can. All right, so I use a black and a light box. If I haven't got a light box, because what I will do is put the pattern on the light box, turn him on so he shines up through, and then I put my fabric over the top and draw my lines. Believe it or not, you can see through plain black, so long as it's a quilting weight. Don't go heavier or thicker or patterned. Okay, plain you can see through quite easily. If you've not got a light box, that's not a problem. Nice bright day like today, take your pattern to the window, stick it on the window and then stick your fabric on top of it, and you should be able to see through. It's quite surprising that black will let you do that and dark colours will let you do that. I use picture framing tape. I'll just plug that a minute. It's nicely strong, it's paper, it rips and makes your life so much easier. I use it all the time here in my studio, also for picking up clothes and bits and pieces off of your quilt, which you might need actually some sort of sellotape or something further on, but I'll explain that when we get there. Okay, so that's me bit of rubbish, but yeah, that got it in there, ideal. So I've got my pattern, I'm shining through, I'm putting my black on it, and then I'm tracing my design. Now I tend to use a white watercolor pencil. Okay, I don't tend to use the sewing stuff because although they're fabulous, they don't stay on very long. There are a few new ones that are more like a white ink that will stay on longer. There's a big fly. Never mind, eh? It's a lovely day here in Cornwall and it's produced flies. Anyway, so you're going to put your design onto your fabric. Hopefully you can see a few lines going on there. All right, so white on the black. On the top of your fabric, if your fabric does have sides that you can quite clearly see, you want it on the top. You're drawing all over the top of your lovely fabric. What I would say is don't use your bestest fabric on the top. because you're going to cut most of it away, like the yellows and the whatever going on behind me. You're going to cut the black away to show what's underneath. So don't be tempted to put your bestest fabric on the top. Okay, so requirements wise, was I going to do requirements? I should do, really, shouldn't I? There's a pattern, a way of transferring your pattern, a white marker or a colour that's going to show on your fabric very clearly. All right, a top fabric, I've used black, and then you want some fabrics that are going to show through that black. Okay, so I've got a hand-dyed batik one there, I've got just a printed pattern red one there, and this one is silver. Okay, it's actually quite thick. You can use any sort of fabric in this technique. It's absolutely fabulous, anything you want. Okay, there's a few rules with which different fabrics is. Cottons are lovely, obviously, and we've probably all got a good supply of them, but you can use velvets. They look fab when they pop through, but velvets put to the bottom of your pile, because you're going to cut through the fabrics to expose. You don't want your velvet on the top, because otherwise you've got to keep cutting through it, and as you do, it sheds, doesn't it? Loads and loads of fibres, although you've got that you can pick it up with. So velvet to the bottom. If you've got shiny satins and things like that, fabulous. Try and put them within any cottons that you're using. Don't put them together, because they'll twist and slide and do stuff whilst you're doing your machining. There's ways around it when you finish, but I'll tell you that in a minute again. All right, so shears, that's another one that works really well. So a nice, I don't know, netting or do you know, voile, that's the word I'm thinking of. Any of those can look lovely. Yeah, they add a slight difference, nuance to all your fabrics in your picture or your design come the end. But you do need to consider, what does it look like on top of maybe my yellow? What does it look like if I'm on top of the red? And what does it look like if I'm top of the silver? Because actually you can only put it to show whatever is beneath. Okay, so it might be, oh yeah, I'll chuck that in the pile, but you've not thought about it. So do think about it, or put a couple of layers in between. All right, how many layers? Not too many. I would say 5, 6 at the most. All right, I have gone up to 12, 13 layers before now, which was really, really interesting and good fun, but it's an awful lot of hard work on your hands getting through the layers. All right, so we want our fabrics, we've got our design, threads. Okay, I've put here lots of variegated. I love my variegated threads because that becomes part of your picture when it's done. But I have to say, I generally use a black. Now, if you're using black, it can be very difficult further down the line when you're doing your cutting if your eyesight isn't fabulous. All right, so bright light if you're going to use black. Yeah, so whatever colour you want, and as many threads as you want, and whatever sort of thread you want, that's absolutely fine. Okay, so threads, fabrics, patterns, we're getting there, aren't we? Small, sharp, pointy scissors. I don't know if you can see those or not. They don't have to be expensive. They need to be sharp and they need to have a point. Okay, and I'll tell you more about them in a bit. So you're pretty well set other than your machine then. Okay, so machine in good working order. New needle. I would usually use a universal, nice sharp new one, or a quilting needle because they're designed to go through layers and stuff. But whatever suits you, that's absolutely fine, so long as your machine is coping with it. All right, you're going to get through a lot of thread because we're going to do a lot of fancy stitching. Right, okay, so I have my pattern. That is going to go on top of my fabrics. Okay, so my fabrics have been laid beneath, right sides up. Okay, so that when we start cutting down, we're exposing the right side. Okay, now for this demonstration, I've cut fabric that is as big as my design area. Okay, can be a bit wasteful, but as a first time, it's probably the safest way to go. What you don't want is doing all your machining and stuff and getting ready to chop things out and find that, oh, I've chopped that lovely bit out there, oh, I've run out of fabric that I wanted underneath. because it's come short. All right, there are ways round, but it's come short. So we're going to avoid that on a first go. Okay, so just have your fabrics as big as your design area. Now, further on, I've got a centre of a flower there. I don't know that you're going to see that for a minute, but centre of a flower. If I was just going to do a different centre and nothing else, okay, so once you've done one and you've got used to it, you could cut a square of fabric just the size of the area that you need, place it underneath, okay, just in the area that you need it, but do make sure it's where you need it. So I would place that first just underneath, and I'd pin it just for a minute through the 2 layers. Then I would put my others underneath, okay, and I know that that's not going to shift. How do you know, have you got enough fabric in the right place? Okay, so if I move that over a bit, so okay, so I'm looking, can you see that? I'm pulling it back each time to see, have I got fabric where my design is? Well, because I've moved my top, no I've not. So I'm just going to put that back there and put that back in the middle, and then I'm just going to have a check. Right, so all my fabrics are showing that side, all my fabrics are showing there and there and there, so I'm good to go. I know that that's safe. If I've got a spare piece, as I say, I might have pinned that underneath the top. Tack your area, okay, just to make life easier, certainly when you're first having a go, but just around the outside edge of your design area, that's enough. You don't need masses of it everywhere. It gets all tangled in your machining, and makes life a little bit more difficult when you're going to take it apart. Okay, so around your area, give it a quick tack. I have to say, once I know what I'm doing, or once I knew what I was doing, I pin that, and I do pin it quite well, because when you're machining, what you don't want is the top bit to flap down under there and get caught in your machining in the wrong place. Okay, so just be aware of that one. So either pins, and be careful not to stab yourself, but I would tack it as a first, all right, and then you're not worrying about things moving or shifting, and then you can take the pins out from the little one underneath and put it right the way through. Okay, when it comes to stitching now, all right, so that's ready to go. We've got another one here. I did a different design on this one. I don't know if you can see all my stitching on there. Okay, so stitching is very important, bearing in mind what is going to be the usage of the item that you're making. If you're just doing a little runner down there like that, that's probably never going to get washed or only just gently, then I would just go for it and machine my design through. Okay, and I'll explain how in a sec. If you're going to do a quilt or something that's going to be intended to be washed gently, always gently, never massively, you need to think about the frayed area. Okay, so let me just get you this one that I've done. Here's one I prepared earlier. I love it. You get a raw edge, and it's going to fray a little bit until it's settled. Okay, what you don't want to do is have things cut quite close, wash it, and it start falling apart. If you've ever done cutting and slashing chenille work, you do lots of very tight stitching so that you can cut up near and it holds your fibres, your fabric all together. So if you're going to do a quilt, what I do, I would get my first one and I will do a straight stitch, very small straight stitch around all of the design. Okay, always start your stitching in the centre and work out. It's a bit like anything quilting, we tend to start in the centre, don't we, and we work out. So that's what you're going to do. You start in the centre and work out, and I do a very small straight stitch. Okay, be careful when you're first doing that you don't do it too small, because in case you do need to take it apart. But if you know you're going to wash it, straight stitch around all of it first, and it will be quicker than you think. And I would do it in black so that it doesn't show. Okay, and that's going to hold everything together for you. Then I would consider, what do I want to be seen, okay, as part of your design. So this one, I've used various different threads, variegated, blacks, all sorts. This one for you so that you can see, I've done in yellows, all right. So I've done a small zigzag, Okay, you don't want it as tight as a satin stitch, but you do want it small. So I've got Genome, and on there it's 1.5 wide by 1 length. Okay, whatever you decide you like, that's lovely. Use whatever you want, and I tend to use zigzag because it's easy and it's quick. Okay, things you need to bear in mind: if you've got small areas like in the center of the design, use a small stitch. Okay, because you've got to get in between with a pair of scissors. Yeah, if you're on the outside edge, there's nothing to say that you can't make it wider, and tell me a nice pattern stitch, something different. We've got all these machines that do masses. Use them, play with them. Okay, so then you get the whole of your design over the top of your black that I've already done, so that actually all you're going to see is the coloured design. I might actually just go back over with a black zigzag if indeed I don't want it to be showing. All right, now you've got some sort of stamen coming out there. I've done them in a fancy stitch, much wider and a different colour, because once I cut all of that out, I want that to show. You can play to your heart's content with this, you really can. It's great fun. You'll soon learn do's and don'ts, like every technique. Okay, so that is what I call my little paddy unit, all done. All right, so it's all layers. Now, there's a lot of wastage under there, isn't there? I'm a bit of a one for cutting away what I'm not going to use. All right, so that actually makes things lighter, much thinner, more flexible, and easier to quilt, if indeed you're going to quilt. I mean, if you're just going to do like a cushion cover or something, you don't even need to quilt it if you don't want to. All right, so at this point I might cut that all away, and bear in mind my silver is actually quite thick, so that's quite heavy, so I'll probably take that away from that one. All right, so there we go. We're ready to expose what's underneath. All right. Oh, one thing I will say, if when you're doing all of this and you're going through lots of layers, because it is quite hard work, don't hammer your machine. All right, I don't care how good your machine is. If you do this at a rate of knots through all those layers, you're gonna land up with a service sooner or later. Okay, so please do not just go for it. I was going to say something else then, the brain's gone. Yeah, so I know what it was. Very important, and I must say it. If you don't like your stitch and you're having to change your tensions on your machines, if you're messing around with your tensions, never touch the bottom tension. Please don't. Not on my behalf anyway, because if you can't get that back to factory setting, further down the line you might land up having to have a service to sort your machine out. Okay, so if you're going to have to change your tensions, just change the top tension. Okay, loosen it, tighten it. You might even want to change any pressure, loosen it very fractionally on your machine. Now, if you've got a walking foot, you could use it. I don't. I tend to use an open-toed foot so as I can see my design as I'm going through and round it. A walking foot will work provided it will cope with the stitch that you want to use. All right, so test it first. Always test everything first, just on a few bits of scraps layered up, and put it through, see what's happening. I like to see my design, so I don't use a walking foot. I just use, as I say, an open toe. All right, so what else do we need to know? That's probably enough for us to get going with the exciting bit. Okay, so warnings about exciting bits. As I say, small, sharp, pointy scissors are always a good thing. I'm going to use that pair there. I've got hundreds of them. I've tried all manner of different ones, so don't be tempted to use squizzers. They're so sharp they'll go through bits and things that you probably don't want. Bent scissors are very difficult unless you're used to using them. You have to have practice. Again, things will happen that you don't want to happen. Blunt ones you can't get started. Okay, but bearing in mind I got big hands, little pointy scissors are so small in the handle. Okay, and I've got a bent finger there and it doesn't like it too much. So please do not spend hours all of a sudden cutting out because you'll cramp your hand up. Okay, and I don't want to be responsible for the paracetamol. All right, so how do we cut this out? Now, the most important thing to remember is do not pull it apart, hold it and cut into an area. Okay, by doing that, I'll guarantee you sooner or later you're going to go through more layers than you need and you'll have damage. You don't want to do that. What do? Is all right, I'll get my scissors, I'll get myself comfy, and I put the point in first. It's probably could do with being closer, but trying to do this all on my own is a bit difficult. So you just poke the end in and make a little snip. Okay, very often you can feel the threads and hear the threads cut as you're going in. Come back, come away from it immediately, and then have a little look and see, oh, what layer am I in? Am I in the right layer? Before continuing to cut. Okay, I don't know if you can see that or not. I'm going to cut this a little bit more so that you can see it. Now, as you go around, obviously you don't want to be cutting your threads that you zigzag your stitching. All right, so if you do, nip it back under the sewing machine and just redo it. I have to say, you won't be looking at your stitching much by the time you've made your item. It all becomes part and parcel of a picture, in effect. It's a piece of artwork, really. It all becomes part of it, and hopefully people aren't going to be picky enough to go, oh, you've done this, in which case I would be thinking of, yeah, is this my friend or not? Why are you doing that? Okay, so as I say, it is raw edge, so you're just cutting it. Oh, there we go, round another one. I tend to keep to one edge and go in one direction. I think it's habit more than anything with me. And when you get real little tiddly bits, sometimes it's like there, that's really quite close. So I've gone right the way through and up. I'm going to cut around at the top, come back down. It's a shame, I'm going to show you this in a minute. The black will probably can't really get anything much out of part of that, and it's going to look like they're touching, and that's absolutely fine. All right, depending how far you cut away from your machining, you'll get different sized borders. All right, so edges. What you could do is come quite wide, and you'll have quite a nice thick whatever. Right, okay, so you can probably see this now. Right, so I have taken out that one there in the middle looks like it's touching. I have cut up the middle, but I'm not gonna kill myself trying to get that little bit out the center. All right, just enough at the top to give the illusion of what's going on. If you've got a nice wide edge, you could cut it at a wriggle. You could snip into it and fluff it up. You could use, you know, if you left it wide, cut it with small ones, and then I might put pinking shears around. That could be interesting. What you might be able to do is, okay, we've done that. I'm just going to chop that bit off and show you what I think for the next one. Okay, there's so much you can do, it's quite frightening really. Now, so I've got a nice area with just yellow. If I want red, I cut the yellow out and it'll expose the red. Okay, what you could do is start, come back, stop, go start the next layer, and then cut 2 layers together. Don't try cutting too many at a time, because if it goes wrong, you really will have a mess on your hands. All right, so yellow, what you could do is cut within a border. All right, I'll show you what I mean in a sec. So I'm cutting my yellow out, but I'm leaving some yellow showing because I want the red, but actually I want a border of yellow as well. Why not? So I've done that at about probably 1/2 inch, just for demonstration purposes. Okay, I'm coming up there, I'm going around there quickly. Right, so That's very rough, but you're going to get the idea. Okay, so I've got a yellow border with a red inner. All right, why not? What I might do then is go back in and zigzag around that edge, keep it down, keep it happy. Or you could cut it right back up close and just have red showing. Okay, so it's really quite flexible. If you wanted silver, you could go down again and you could have yellow, red and silver showing, or just silver, up to you. Might be an idea when you're first starting, if you've cut this bit away, to make yourself a little list of where are your fabrics, which are your fabrics, where are they placed. Use your pattern. Where do I want them to show through? And actually I've got this layer first, that layer first, second, yeah, third, fourth, whatever. Make your life easier. Work methodically to start. Take your time. Write down your sewing machine measurements, or you know, your length and your width, or take a photo of it. We've all got cameras, or most of us have now got cameras on our phones. You can take a quick photo and then you've got it in your mind of if you go away and have to come back, you know you can carry on. If you're going to do something big, you might need that information because it might take you a little while. Yeah, the cutting away is wonderful fun. It's worth it just for that. What I tend to do is I'll make up these units, and then when I go indoors for an evening, I will sit and I will cut away while watching the telly or something. It just, I don't know about you, but I take this in and I sit with my hubby, love him dearly. He's watching telly or whatever, and I'm really not a telly person. I listen, but I don't take any notice. And I'm sat there and I'm doing this, and I'm there for company really, but he never talks to me. It's weird, isn't it? You've got to be there, but you're not actually being spoken to. I don't know. That's just my house, I would think. But there we go. So, and then by the time you've chopped it out, well, like that, don't forget you can remove the back. What you could also do if you needed, if you've still got like, there's several layers in there, actually very carefully, all right, so I've got red showing and I know that underneath there I've still got silver and yellow. All right, so what you could do to make things a bit thinner again is go into the back and roughly, I wouldn't worry too much about it being amazing because you're not going to see this, but this helps with your quilting again, is just remove it from behind some of the layers. All right, I'm going to leave the silver in there because that's actually quite thick, and I'm just showing you this as a, there we go. So that area now, when I come to quilt it, is going to be so much thinner and easier to do. It all helps. Now these big pieces that I cut out, I hang on to them, the big stuff, which is why I've got a mountain of bits and pieces, but you'll be amazed how many of these you can come back to and use as scrap and stash, you know, random designs, not necessarily in this. I also teach and do an awful lot of shadow applique, so all these pieces come in fabulously. So shadow applique is where you lay it onto a background and put a cover on it, a sheer cover on it, and stitch. I'll maybe do a video for that at some point if anybody wants. If anybody wants, let me know. Yeah, so there we go. And then you've got your block, cut it to whatever size you want, make up your quilt or your item or whatever you're doing. So that is a finished panel there. Okay, I've done these two differently because what I'm going to do now, because these are samples that I'm having to do for this, I'll finish these two off and then I'm going to have a little runner with the three. Okay, so also with this technique, a fail safe for anything that might go wrong within it. All right, cut a hole right the way through your piece of work. Do it, finish everything else, and then you know, like this one here, I cut the wrong bit, so actually I've got silver where I don't need silver in the red. Cut that out right the way through so you've got a hole in your work. All right, get another piece of red fabric that you want, put it underneath, and then stitch from the back. You attach it to the back, and then the colour is right and nobody's ever gonna know. All right, so if in doubt, You might have got the wrong colour coming through, you might have cut through a layer that you don't like, you might think, actually, I should have had a totally different bit of fabric in there and I didn't. Cut a hole through your work. I know it sounds a bit weird. Put your fabric back underneath and all will be well. Okay, so that's your way out of just about anything you need to on this technique. All right. What else can I tell you other than it is great fun? It becomes obsessive. Okay, so just beware of your hands. All right, that's probably why I've got arthritis. So just be careful. All right, it's good fun. Can I tell you anything else? I don't know that I can, other than if you need any help or you want any classes, give me a shout. As I say, the book is still available, but it's a pamphlet book. Hundreds of patterns available, and all my patterns could be done just as appliqué, so you can quite obviously see what the area is to use on all my designs, that you could just attach it, bonder web or needle turn or whatever is your way of appliqué. So there's a double usage on all my patterns. Okay, available over at Abbieanne.com, because I have to do the little pluggy bit. And if anybody fancies picture framing tape, you can give me a shout and I'll see can I get. Okay, right, I think we're done. Okay, yeah, please do shout me if I can do anything for anybody. Enjoy. I think that is the major thing. I think I've gone through everything that I can think of that you would need to know. Yeah, now go and have a lovely day sewing. Be lovely.